No, please. Not again. Azariah's breath came in short, sharp gasps as she pressed herself against the cold wall. The dim lighting of the penthouse suite cast eerie shadows across the room, amplifying the chaos inside her mind. She could still feel the heat of his touch, the weight of his dominance, the intensity of his hunger. It was never supposed to be like this. She had wanted all four styles. Gentle, passionate, playful, rough. Instead, she got only one, intense heat. A fire so consuming that she felt she was being burned alive every time he touched her. She gripped the silk sheets, her body trembling, her heart pounding so loudly she feared it would explode. The man she had chosen, the one she had given herself to, stood across the room, watching her with dark, unreadable eyes. Kairos Sinclair, the billionaire with a reputation for getting what he wanted, and never giving an inch in return. You wanted everything, Azariah. His deep voice sent shivers down her spine. I gave you what you could handle. If you think you can leave now. He smirked, stepping closer, his 6'3" frame towering over her. Then you don't know me at all. Her pulse spiked. She wasn't sure if it was from fear or something far more dangerous, because the truth was, she wasn't sure she wanted to leave. Azariah's fingers curled into the sheets, her pulse racing as Kairos' towering figure closed in. The heat in his eyes was suffocating. She had craved variety, something different each time, but all she ever got from him was raw, uncontrollable intensity. You should have told me, she whispered, her voice barely audible over the pounding of her heart. Told you what? Kairos smirked, tilting his head as if he was genuinely curious. That you only have one speed, fire. He chuckled, a low, dangerous sound that sent chills down her spine. And yet you keep coming back. Her stomach twisted because he wasn't wrong. She should have run after the first time he claimed her so ruthlessly. She should have known he wasn't capable of softness, of tenderness. But instead, she kept getting pulled into his world, trapped in a cycle of burning passion and overwhelming control. I'm leaving, she said, though even to her own ears, it didn't sound convincing. Kairos' smirk widened as he took another step closer. You say that every time, Azariah. But tell me, has it ever been true? Her breath hitched. She hated how well he knew her. How easily he could strip away her defenses with just a look. Maybe this time I mean it, she whispered. Cairo reached out, his fingers grazing her jaw, his touch electrifying. Then go, he said softly, but there was a challenge in his eyes. Walk out that door, Azariah. If you truly want to leave, I won't stop you. Her throat tightened. Why was it so hard to move? To walk away from a man who gave her everything she didn't ask for and nothing she did. She took a shaky breath and turned toward the door. Her legs felt heavy, her heart hammering. This was her chance to escape his hold, to break free from the fire. But then, one last night, Kairos' voice was a dark whisper behind her. Stay, and I'll give you something different. The side of me you think I don't have. Azariah froze. Was he telling the truth? Could he really be someone other than the man who consumed her whole? She turned back to him, her body betraying her mind. Prove it, she said. Kairos' lips curved into a knowing smile. Challenge accepted. Azariah stood frozen as Kairos' words lingered in the air. One last night. It sounded like a promise, but she wasn't naive enough to believe it was that simple. Kairos Sinclair wasn't a man who played fair. His dark eyes held hers, a silent battle raging between them. He was daring her to trust him, to let him show her another side of himself. But could he even offer something different? Could a man like Cairo, ruthless, intense, and unyielding, be anything but fire? Say yes, Azariah. His voice was smooth, almost hypnotic. She should have walked out that door, left him and the chaos he brought into her life. But instead, she whispered, Fine. One night. Kairos' smirk was slow, victorious. Good girl. Her stomach twisted at those two words. She wasn't sure if she liked the way they made her feel. Or maybe she did. The penthouse bedroom felt different that night. The usual intensity in Cairo's touch was dialed down, his movements slower, more deliberate. He traced lazy circles on her wrist as he studied her. "You always run," he murmured. "You never give me a reason to stay." She countered. His eyes darkened. "Then tell me what you want." Azariah inhaled sharply. No one had ever asked her that before. Cairo had always taken what he wanted, and she had let him. But now, he was giving her control. Did she trust him enough to take it? She hesitated before whispering, "I want something real, Cairo. Something that isn't just heat and control." For the first time, she saw something flicker in his expression, hesitation, uncertainty. Then, just as quickly, it was gone. He leaned in, his lips brushing against her ear. "Careful what you wish for, sweetheart." The morning sunlight streamed through the windows, painting golden patterns across the sheets. Azariah stretched, expecting to feel the usual post-storm chaos that came after a night with Cairo. But something was different. For the first time, she didn't feel like she had been consumed. She turned her head, surprised to find Cairo still in bed beside her. Normally, he was up before dawn, already on a call, already back to business. But now, he was lying there, watching her. "You're staring," she murmured. "You're still here," he replied. Azariah swallowed. "I said one night." Cairo's jaw tensed. "And now?" She didn't know. Because for the first time since meeting him, she wasn't sure if she wanted to leave. But just as she opened her mouth to answer, Cairo's phone buzzed on the nightstand. He glanced at the screen, and in an instant, the warmth in his eyes vanished. His expression turned to steel. Azariah sat up. "What's wrong?" He swung his legs over the edge of the bed, already reaching for his suit jacket. "I have to go." That was it. No explanation, no reassurance. The fire was back. And just like that, she realized, Cairo Sinclair could never truly be anything but intense heat. But the real question was, why was she still willing to burn for him? Azariah sat in bed, watching Cairo button his crisp white shirt. His expression was unreadable, his focus on his phone as he typed something furiously. It was always like this. One moment, she felt like she had a piece of him. The next, he was a stranger again. She hated it. "Are you going to tell me where you're going?" she asked. Cairo didn't look up. Business. That was his favorite word. A word that meant don't ask questions. Azariah clenched her fists. "I don't understand you, Cairo." He finally glanced at her, his dark eyes sharp. "I never asked you to." The coldness in his voice made her stomach twist. She had let him in last night, let herself believe, even for a second, that he could be different. But he had only given her a glimpse before shutting the door in her face again. She swung her legs over the bed and stood. "You said one night, and I stayed. But I can't keep doing this. I wanted something different, and you, Azariah." His tone was a warning, but she ignored it. "You gave me the illusion of change," she continued. "But it's still the same. You're still the same." Cairo exhaled sharply, pinching the bridge of his nose. "I never promised you fairy tales, sweetheart." Her chest ached. "No, you just made me believe in one for a second." His jaw clenched. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then, without another word, Cairo grabbed his jacket and walked out, leaving the door open behind him. Azariah stared at the empty doorway. She had begged for different styles. She had gotten one, fire, and it was consuming her. Azariah didn't hear from Cairo for 2 days. She told herself she didn't care, that this was exactly what she needed, a clean break. But every time her phone buzzed, she found herself hoping it was him. It never was. She tried distracting herself, meeting up with her best friend, Livia, at a rooftop lounge in Manhattan. But even with the city skyline glittering around them, her mind was elsewhere. "You look like you're waiting for someone." Livia said, sipping her cocktail. Azariah forced a smile. Just thinking. Livia raised an eyebrow. Let me guess, Cairo? Azariah sighed. I don't know what's wrong with me, Liv. I wanted him to show me something different, and when he tried, I still wasn't satisfied. Because he didn't try, Livia pointed out. He gave you just enough to keep you hooked. That man is dangerous, Azariah. Dangerous. The words sent a chill down her spine. I know, she admitted. But it's not just him. It's how he makes me feel. Livia shook her head. That's how men like him work. They make you crave them, even when you know they're bad for you. Azariah wanted to argue, but deep down, she knew her friend was right. Then, as if fate was mocking her, her phone vibrated. A message from an unknown number. Stay away from Cairo Sinclair before it's too late. Her heart stopped. What is it? Livia asked, noticing her face pale. Azariah swallowed hard, rereading the message. It's a warning, she whispered. Azariah didn't sleep that night. The message replayed in her mind over and over. Who had sent it? And too late for what? By morning, she made up her mind. She needed answers. Cairo had left a trail of mystery since the moment she met him. She had accepted his secrecy, let herself be blinded by the fire. But now, she couldn't ignore the feeling that something bigger was happening. She found herself outside his office tower, her hands trembling as she stepped inside. Miss Moreau, the receptionist greeted her. Mr. Sinclair isn't expecting you. He'll want to see me, Azariah said, forcing confidence into her voice. The receptionist hesitated before making a call. A few minutes later, she nodded. Go up. But he's in a meeting, so be patient. Azariah took the elevator to the top floor, her heartbeat pounding. When the doors opened, she expected to find Cairo alone in his office. Instead, she walked into something far worse. A group of men in suits stood around Cairo's desk, their expressions serious. Cairo sat at the head of the table, his usual arrogance replaced by something colder. Then she saw the man sitting across from him. The moment his gaze landed on her, the room shifted. Azariah felt a chill crawl up her spine. She knew this man, and she knew, without a doubt, that she had just walked into something dangerous. Cairo's expression darkened. Azariah, leave! Now. But it was too late, because the man smirked and said, Well, I didn't know Sinclair had a weakness. Azariah's stomach dropped. She had come for answers. Instead, she had just become a target. Azariah's breath caught in her throat. The tension in the room was suffocating. Cairo rose from his chair, his expression dark and controlled. I said leave. But the man across from him, tall, sharp-eyed, radiating power, ignored Cairo and kept his gaze locked on Azariah. Now, why would you send her away? The man mused. She's already seen too much. Azariah swallowed hard. Who are you? The man smirked. Milo Varela. The name sent a shiver through her. She had heard it before, on the news, in hushed whispers. A powerful man with dangerous connections. A man people feared. Cairo clenched his jaw. She's not part of this, Milo. Milo tilted his head. A woman is always part of a man's downfall, Sinclair. And I have to say, this one looks worth the trouble. Azariah's skin prickled. She had never seen Cairo look so tense. He was always in control, always confident. But now, there was something else in his eyes. Something she had never seen before. Fear. For her. Milo leaned back in his chair. You know the problem, Sinclair? You play with fire, but you forget that fire spreads. And now, it's spreading to her. Azariah's pulse pounded. What does he mean, Cairo? Cairo didn't answer. Instead, he turned to Milo, his voice low, threatening. You don't touch her. Milo chuckled. That depends on you. The room was too hot, too suffocating. Azariah's legs felt weak, but she forced herself to stand her ground. She had come here for answers, but now, She realized she had just stepped into a world she wasn't ready for. The moment Cairo's office door shut behind them, Azariah whirled on him. "What the hell was that?" she demanded. Cairo ran a hand through his hair, his usual composure slipping. "You shouldn't have come here, clearly," she snapped. "Who is Milo Varela? And why does he think I'm part of your downfall?" Cairo exhaled sharply. "It's complicated." Azariah crossed her arms. "Then uncomplicated." Silence. Then, finally, Cairo looked at her, really looked at her. His walls cracked just enough for her to see what was underneath. Regret. "It was supposed to be just you and me," he admitted. "But my past. My business. It doesn't work that way." Azariah's stomach twisted. "What business, Cairo?" He hesitated. Then, in a voice so quiet she almost missed it, he said, "The kind that gets people killed." Her blood ran cold. Cairo stepped closer, his hands gripping her arms. "You need to listen to me. If you walk away now, you're safe. But if you stay..." "If I stay?" she whispered. His jaw tightened. "Then you belong to me. And that means you become part of all of this." Azariah stared into his eyes, her heart pounding. The fire had always drawn her in. But now, she realized she wasn't just playing with it. She was trapped inside the flames, and there was no way out. Azariah stood frozen, her mind spinning. Cairo's grip on her arms was firm, his eyes locked onto hers, waiting for an answer. "If I stay, I belong to you?" she echoed, her voice barely above a whisper. Cairo didn't blink. "Yes." Something inside her cracked. A part of her had always wanted to belong to him, to be something more than just a fleeting moment in his world. But this wasn't the way she had imagined it. "Belong to you how, Cairo?" she asked. "As your lover? Or as another pawn in whatever game you're playing?" His jaw clenched. "You think this is a game?" Azariah swallowed hard. "You tell me." Cairo exhaled, his hands dropping from her arms. He ran a hand through his hair, his frustration evident. "Milo Varela isn't just some businessman, Azariah. He's the kind of man who buries secrets 6 feet under. And now, because you walked into that room, you're on his radar." A chill ran down her spine. "He threatened me," she murmured. Cairo's expression darkened. "No. He threatened me, by making you the target." The realization hit her like a freight train. Milo wasn't just warning her to stay away from Cairo. He was letting Cairo know that she was now leverage. Azariah shook her head. "I didn't sign up for this." Cairo's eyes burned into hers. "Then walk away." Her heart pounded. She wanted to. She should. But something about the way Cairo was looking at her, the way his voice wavered just slightly when he told her to leave, made her hesitate. If she walked away, would Milo really let her go? And more importantly, could she really walk away from him? "But if you stay." "If I stay?" she whispered. His jaw tightened. "Then you belong to me. And that means you become part of all of this." Azariah stared into his eyes, her heart pounding. The fire had always drawn her in. But now, she realized she wasn't just playing with it. She was trapped inside the flames, and there was no way out. Azariah stood frozen, her mind spinning. Cairo's grip on her arms was firm, his eyes locked onto hers, waiting for an answer. "If I stay, I belong to you?" she echoed, her voice barely above a whisper. Cairo didn't blink. "Yes." Something inside her cracked. A part of her had always wanted to belong to him, to be something more than just a fleeting moment in his world. But this wasn't the way she had imagined it. "Belong to you how, Cairo?" she asked. "As your lover? Or as another pawn in whatever game you're playing?" His jaw clenched. "You think this is a game?" Azariah swallowed hard. "You tell me." Cairo exhaled, his hands dropping from her arms. He ran a hand through his hair, his frustration evident. "Milo Varela isn't just some businessman, Azariah. He's the kind of man who buries secrets 6 feet under. And now, because you walked into that room, you're on his radar. A chill ran down her spine. He threatened me, she murmured. Cairo's expression darkened. No. He threatened me, by making you the target. The realization hit her like a freight train. Milo wasn't just warning her to stay away from Cairo. He was letting Cairo know that she was now leverage. Azariah shook her head. I didn't sign up for this. Cairo's eyes burned into hers. Then walk away. Her heart pounded. She wanted to. She should. But something about the way Cairo was looking at her, the way his voice wavered just slightly when he told her to leave, made her hesitate. If she walked away, would Milo really let her go? And more importantly, could she really walk away from him? Zane stepped out first, scanning the area before opening her door. Let's go. Azariah followed him inside, her heart hammering in her chest. The elevator ride to the top floor felt endless. When the doors finally opened, Cairo was waiting for her. He stood near the floor-to-ceiling windows, a glass of whiskey in his hand. The city lights reflected off the sharp angles of his face, making him look even more untouchable than usual. You sent someone to take me from my own home? Azariah demanded. Cairo took a slow sip of his drink. You were already taken the moment you walked into my office that day. Her stomach twisted. So what now? You keep me locked away like some secret? Cairo stepped closer, his eyes dark with something unreadable. No, Azariah. His voice was quiet, dangerous. I protect what's mine. A shiver ran through her. She should have been afraid, but all she could feel was the fire, and it was burning hotter than ever. Azariah stood frozen, Cairo's words echoing in her mind. I protect what's mine. Her pulse pounded. She wanted to scream, to tell him that she wasn't his possession. But deep down, she knew Cairo Sinclair wasn't a man who let go of something he wanted. And right now, that something was her. She swallowed hard. What does that even mean, Cairo? Protect me from what? His jaw tightened. From Milo. From anyone who thinks they can use you against me. A bitter laugh escaped her lips. And what if I don't want to be protected? What if I just want to leave? Cairo's gaze darkened. You still don't get it, do you? He stepped closer, his voice low, lethal. You don't have a choice anymore. Something inside her snapped. Screw that. She turned to leave. A sharp sound cracked through the air. A gunshot. Azariah's body locked up. She turned just in time to see Zane, his gun raised, his eyes scanning the penthouse windows. Cairo, Zane started. Glass shattered. Azariah screamed as Cairo tackled her to the ground, shielding her with his body as bullets rained into the room. Her ears rang. The sharp scent of gunpowder filled the air. Cairo's voice was in her ear. Stay down. She couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. Seconds felt like hours. Then, finally, silence. Cairo pushed off her, his expression lethal as he pulled his own gun from his holster. Zane was already by the window, his posture stiff. Sniper. He's gone now. Cairo clenched his jaw. Milo. Azariah's blood ran cold. They had just been talking about him. And now, he was trying to kill them. Cairo turned to her, his face unreadable. Still think you can just walk away? She shivered. She had never been this close to death before, but instead of fear, something else ignited in her. Rage. No, she whispered. I won't walk away. Cairo raised an eyebrow. You sure about that, sweetheart? She met his gaze head on. I want to know everything. I want to know why Milo wants you dead. And more importantly, I want to know how we make him pay. A slow smirk curled on Cairo's lips. Now you're speaking my language. The next 24 hours passed in a blur. Azariah learned more about Cairo Sinclair than she ever thought she would. Milo Varela wasn't just a businessman. He was a kingpin. He owned people, politicians, law enforcement, even entire corporations. Cairo had been working against him for years, cutting into his power, taking over his territories. Now, Milo was retaliating, and he was using Azariah as leverage. She sat across from Cairo at the massive oak table in his penthouse, her fingers drumming against the surface. "So what's the plan?" Cairo smirked. "You really want in on this?" She narrowed her eyes. "I need to be in on this. He came for me, Cairo. That means I get a say in how this ends." Zane let out a low whistle. "I like her." Cairo studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "Fine. But you do exactly as I say." Azariah crossed her arms. "We'll see about that." The night was cold. The city lights cast eerie shadows as Azariah walked into the abandoned warehouse. Milo was waiting. He leaned against the table, arms crossed, a knowing smirk on his face. "I knew you'd come." Azariah swallowed her fear. "You tried to kill me." Milo chuckled. "No, sweetheart. I tried to kill Cairo. You were just collateral." She clenched her fists. "Well, I'm still standing." Milo's smirk widened. "For now." A door creaked open behind her. Footsteps. Cairo. Milo barely looked surprised. "Ah, Sinclair." Right on time. Cairo's gun was already raised. "Let's end this." Milo sighed. "You always were impatient." He snapped his fingers. Armed men stepped out of the shadows. Guns cocked. Azariah's heart pounded. Milo smirked. "Did you really think I'd come alone?" Cairo's expression didn't change. "Did you?" Suddenly, boom, the entire warehouse exploded into chaos. Shots rang out. Glass shattered. Azariah dove behind a crate, her ears ringing. She had never been in a gunfight before. She wasn't ready for this. But Cairo was. He moved like a shadow, taking down Milo's men with brutal precision. Zane was at his side, a deadly force of his own. Milo tried to run. Azariah saw it, and without thinking, she acted. She grabbed the gun Cairo had given her earlier and fired. The bullet hit Milo's leg. He screamed, collapsing onto the ground. Silence fell. Cairo walked over, standing above him. He cocked his gun, his expression cold. Milo spat blood. "You don't have the guts, Sinclair." Cairo tilted his head. "Maybe not." Then, he handed the gun to Azariah. Her hands trembled as she took it. She met Milo's gaze. This man had tried to kill her. Had tried to make her a pawn. Had destroyed countless lives. Now, she had the power. Her finger hovered over the trigger. But then, she lowered the gun. Milo smirked. "You don't have it in you."
Azariah exhaled sharply. Then, she slammed the gun across his face, knocking him unconscious. Cairo chuckled. "I think I love you." Azariah rolled her eyes. "Shut up." Milo Varela was arrested. Cairo had used every connection he had to make sure the man stayed behind bars. Azariah sat on the penthouse balcony, sipping wine as she watched the city lights. Cairo stepped up behind her, his hand sliding around her waist. "You did good." She smirked. "I almost shot him." He chuckled. "Almost." She turned to face him. "So what now?" Cairo's eyes darkened with something familiar. "Something dangerous, now?" He leaned in, brushing his lips against hers. "Now, you're really mine." The fire between them burned hotter than ever, and this time, she didn't want to escape it.
Please subscribe, like, comment and share this video. It means a lot to us. Thank you.